At the fertility clinic, Sarah squeezed my hand, her smile bright. Almost there, Dale. Across from us, a couple whispered, "Donor number 703, they said. I stiffened. That number, I realized, was not mine. It was a detail from a form I'd briefly scanned weeks ago. Sarah felt my sudden tension. Her smile flickered, then hardened, a subtle, almost imperceptible tightening in her jaw. The engine of my sedan idled, a low rumble against the silence of the nearly empty grocery store parking lot. My fist slammed the steering wheel, the sharp impact vibrating up my arm. The world outside the windshield blurred, a smear of fluorescent light from the store sign. Rage pulsed behind my eyes, hot and thick. But it wasn't enough to clear the fog in my head. In my other hand, crumpled and damp with sweat, was the medical report. It confirmed what I already knew, what I had refused to believe. The donor ID for the embryo used in Sarah's pregnancy didn't match mine. It was a sterile, unforgiving sequence of numbers and letters, stark proof of a stranger's claim. 4 months, 4 months of planning, of anticipation, of letting myself believe in a future that had now been snatched away. 4 months since the positive test, since Sarah's tearful, joyful call. My mind drifted back to the life we'd built, a life that now felt like an elaborate stage set. Sarah and I, the couple everyone envied. Our renovated craftsman home on Willow Creek with its new kitchen and the perennial garden Sarah tended. Our successful careers, mine in finance, hers in marketing. And Rusty, our orange tabby, who would rub against my ankles when I got home, demanding attention. We had everything, or so I thought. The one thing missing had been a child. 3 long years we'd tried, each month a fresh cycle of hope and crushing disappointment. The emotional toll of infertility had been heavy. Sarah, usually so resilient, would fall apart after each failed attempt, her face tear-streaked, her voice thin with grief. I remembered her slumped on the sofa, clutching a throw pillow, saying, "Maybe we should just stop, Dale. Maybe it's not meant to be." It was a quiet Tuesday evening, dinner still warm on the stove, when she brought up IVF. Her voice was low, almost a whisper. "It feels like our last hope, doesn't it?" I didn't hesitate. I reached across the table, squeezing her hand. "Whatever it takes," I'd pledged, my voice firm, believing in the truth of those words. I meant them. The financial cost was substantial. We'd tapped into our investment savings, money we'd set aside for a new roof or early retirement. But a family felt worth more than any number in a bank account. Sarah took charge of coordinating the appointments, the medications, the endless paperwork. "You're so busy with the Maplewood account," she'd said, brushing my hair back from my forehead. "I'll handle the details." I trusted her completely. Why wouldn't I? She was my wife, my partner. I still remember the day of the embryo transfer. A sterile room, Dr. Hansen's calm voice, Sarah's wide, hopeful eyes. I'd even taken a selfie, a foolish, grinning man beside a beaming Dr. Hansen. Sarah resting on the table behind us. A tiny, almost invisible speck of life just placed inside her. It felt like the beginning of everything. The pregnancy had been textbook, smooth. The nursery, painted a soft sage green, stood ready. I'd assembled the crib myself, wrestling with the Allen wrench and tiny screws, feeling a quiet satisfaction with each turn. The changing table, the rocking chair, each piece a tangible promise. My excitement grew with every passing week. At 16 weeks, the ultrasound showed strong heartbeats, a clear form taking shape. Fatherhood, I thought, was finally within reach. I started reading parenting books, poring over chapters on sleep training and baby food. Then came Tuesday. The Tuesday everything changed. I was reviewing our insurance forms, cross-referencing bills against explanation of benefits statements, a mundane task I usually put off. On a Heartland fertility clinic form, buried among codes and charges, I saw it. Donor reference ID 703BXYZ. My own patient number was clearly listed elsewhere on the same document, beginning with D882CUVW. The numbers didn't match, not even close. A cold, distinct dread began to spread through my chest like a stain seeping through fabric. My breath hitched. I found my own donor paperwork, buried in a folder in my office desk, and compared the numbers again, painstakingly, line by line. The discrepancy was undeniable. My patient number was mine. The donor reference number on Sarah's form was someone else's. I spent the night staring at the ceiling, the numbers burning behind my eyelids. The digital clock on the bedside table glowed 3:17 a.m., then 4:08 a.m. Sarah slept beside me, her breathing soft and even. Her hand rested gently on the curve of her belly, a gesture of maternal instinct I'd once found so moving. Now it felt like a silent accusation. The next morning, the silence in the house was thick, heavier than usual. Sarah kissed me goodbye before heading out, a quick peck on the cheek, her eyes a little too bright. As soon as her car pulled out of the driveway, I grabbed my keys. The drive to the Heartland Fertility Clinic felt both too long and too short. My knuckles were white on the steering wheel, my jaw tight. I parked in the lot, the familiar building looming, a symbol of broken promises. For 20 minutes I sat there, engine off, staring at the brick facade. My heart hammered against my ribs. I had to compose myself, force the rage back down, put on a face of calm, controlled inquiry. Inside, the waiting room was quiet, a low hum of hushed conversations and the rustle of magazines. Brenda Lee, the receptionist, looked up as I approached her desk. Her smile was practiced, professional. "Morning, Dale. Can I help you?" "Yes," I managed, my voice sounding more steady than I felt. "I'm here to verify some information. I need to know which specific embryo was used in Sarah's recent procedure. Just a quick check for our records, you know." Brenda nodded, her fingers moving efficiently across her keyboard. Her brow furrowed slightly, then her expression shifted. The polite reassurance slipped, replaced by a flicker of confusion. "That's strange," she murmured, more to herself than to me. She leaned closer to the screen. "The embryo used wasn't the one from your initial consultation. It looks like a donor specimen was substituted." My stomach dropped, a cold, heavy stone. "A donor?" The word felt foreign, wrong. "I never consented to that. We used my sperm." Brenda's eyes widened, a genuine surprise. She clicked to another section of the digital file. "According to our records, your wife authorized the change herself. There's a signed form here." The room tilted. The beige walls, the framed landscape prints, Brenda's face, they all seemed to waver. "Without my signature," I stated, my voice flat, "that shouldn't be possible. Both partners have to consent." Brenda's gaze darted around the empty waiting room. She lowered her voice, almost a whisper. "You're right, Mr. Peterson. We have strict protocols requiring both partners' consent for any donor material." I was already backing toward the door, my hand on the cool metal handle. "Clearly," I said, the words feeling like ice in my mouth, "those protocols failed." I walked out, the fluorescent light of the clinic feeling too bright, too stark. In the car, I pulled out my phone and called my boss. My voice was so altered, so strained, he immediately granted me emergency leave. "Take as long as you need, Dale," he'd said, a note of concern in his voice. The drive home was a blur. I ignored speed limits, drove through a couple of yellow lights that were probably already red. The familiar streets were just scenery, unregistered by my mind. I slammed the front door, the sharp sound echoing through the house. Rusty, who had been curled on the armchair, bolted, disappearing under the kitchen table. Then I saw her, Sarah. She was standing by the kitchen island, a coffee mug in her trembling hands. Her eyes were red-rimmed, puffy, as if she hadn't slept. She knew. She must have. "You went to Heartland," she said, her voice thin, barely above a whisper. It wasn't a question. It was a statement of fact, a confirmation of the breach. My jaw tightened. "Lori texted me," she continued, her voice catching. "She said you were asking questions." Lori Schmidt, Sarah's friend, worked in administration at the clinic. Of course, I stood there silent, my hands clenched into fists at my sides, barely controlling the rage that threatened to consume me. "Why?" The single word was raw, stripped bare. Sarah took a tentative step toward me, her hand reaching out. I stepped back, a swift, decisive move that put physical distance between us. She let her hand drop. "You wouldn't understand," she whispered, her voice cracking. I wanted the best for our baby. I wanted superior genetics." A hollow laugh escaped my throat, devoid of humor. "Superior to mine?" She rushed to explain, her words tumbling out. "The donor was incredible, Dale. perfect health, no family history of anything. 6'2", athletic build, blonde hair, blue eyes, a PhD in neuroscience. You know how important health and intelligence are to me. My father has hypertension, I interjected, the words flat, emotionless. Is that it? My family's blood pressure disqualified me from fatherhood? Sarah wrapped her arms around her stomach, a protective gesture that felt like a slap. It's still our baby, Dale. You'll still be the father in every meaningful way, except biologically. Except for the part where you deliberately excluded me from creating our child. I shot back, my voice rising. Except for the part where you have been lying to me for months. Rusty, a silent, furry orange sentinel, watched us from his perch on the bookcase. Tears streamed down Sarah's face now, but her resolve remained. I was trying to secure the best future for our family. I thought you'd understand. If what? I pressed, stepping closer, my voice low and dangerous. If I found out after the birth? When exactly were you planning to tell me, Sarah? Or were you hoping I'd never discover I was raising another man's child? Her silence was damning. She looked away, her shoulders shaking. And Lori Schmidt, I continued pushing, she just helped you commit medical fraud? Falsifying consent forms? That's what this is, Sarah. Her face went pale, the last of her composure crumbling. No, Lori just helped with the administrative side. She didn't forge anything. Right, I countered, the sarcasm biting. She just conveniently bypassed the requirement for my signature before substituting my sperm with someone else's. An administrative oversight, then? The silence stretched again, thick and suffocating, broken only by Sarah's ragged sniffling. I believed I was doing what was right, she finally whispered, her voice barely audible. I grabbed my car keys from the kitchen counter, the metal cool against my palm. I need to leave, I said, my voice tight. I can't be here right now. The air in the house felt suffocating. Where are you going? Sarah's voice was small, almost childlike, a stark contrast to the determined woman I thought I knew. Anywhere that isn't here. The words were clipped, leaving no room for argument. I walked to the hallway closet, pulled out Rusty's carrier, its plastic shell familiar in my hands. I scooped Rusty up, his warm weight a comfort against my chest, and then grabbed his bag of food from the pantry. You're taking the cat? Sarah asked, her voice incredulous, a strange focus in the face of everything else. Yes, I'm taking the cat, I snapped, turning to face her. He's actually mine. The words were meant to sting, to define a line in the sand. I walked out the front door without looking back. My vision had narrowed, tunneling, blurring the edges of the familiar porch, the neatly trimmed hedges. I placed Rusty's carrier in the passenger seat. His green eyes blinked up at me from behind the mesh, an orange paw pressing against the plastic. The weight of everything lost, everything shattered, crashed over me, heavy and cold. It's just us now, buddy, I told him, my voice rough. I drove aimlessly for hours. The familiar streets of our town gave way to the anonymous sprawl of the highway, then back again to smaller, older neighborhoods. My mind was a kaleidoscope of images. Sarah's tear-streaked face, Brenda Lee's confused expression, the numbers on the form, the sage-green walls of the nursery. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in bruised purples and grays. Eventually, without conscious thought, I found myself pulling up outside Gus Jensen's apartment building. Gus and I had been friends since high school. He was the kind of man who didn't ask too many questions until he saw you were ready to answer. I showed up without calling, my face, I knew, a mess of exhaustion and disbelief. Gus opened the door, a beer in his hand, ready for a quiet night. He took one look at me, at my slumped shoulders and hollow eyes, and the beer was forgotten. Get in here, Dale, he said, his voice firm but gentle. I sat on his worn sofa, Rusty's carrier beside me, and gave him the condensed version. It felt inadequate, too simple for the monumental betrayal. She replaced my sperm with a donor's, I said, the words feeling alien, absurd. Gus listened, his face grim, nodding slowly as I spoke. He walked to the fridge and grabbed 2 more beers, popping the tops with a hiss. Just as I finished, Betty, Gus's girlfriend, arrived home. She took in the scene. Me, pale and distraught, Rusty peeking out of his carrier, Gus's worried expression. Without a word, she moved into action. She went to their spare room, pulling fresh sheets from the linen closet, making the bed, arranging pillows. Then she grabbed a plastic storage bin from the garage, poured a bag of kitty litter into it, and placed it in the corner of the guest bathroom. Practicality, I realized, was her language of care. I spent the night staring at the guest bedroom ceiling, the unfamiliar texture of the popcorn finish a distraction. Rusty, sensing my distress, had curled up on my chest, his purr a low rumble against my ear. My phone, lying face down on the nightstand, repeatedly lit up. Sarah. Call after call. Eventually, I reached over and turned it off. The silence was a relief, though it did nothing to quiet the storm in my head. The next morning, the guest room was bright with early light. I felt no better, just a dull ache behind my eyes. I knew I couldn't just drift. I needed to act. Gus had given me the number of his cousin's divorce attorney, Martha Olson. She was tough, he'd said, and fair. I called her office as soon as they opened. Martha Olson's office. This is Laura. Yes, I said, my voice still rough from lack of sleep. I'd like to schedule an appointment with Mrs. Olson. My name is Dale Peterson. Gus Jensen, her cousin, recommended her. I got an appointment for later that afternoon. When I sat across from Martha Olson, her office neat and efficient, I explained everything again. The non-matching donor ID, Sarah's admission. The superior genetics. As I spoke, Martha's eyebrows rose, incrementally, a subtle shift that showed her surprise but also her steady professionalism. She was listening, truly listening. If I leave now, I asked, the words raw, the implication heavy, what happens with the baby? Martha frowned, tapping her pen against her notepad. The sound was soft, deliberate. She looked at me, her expression serious. Martha pushed her glasses up her nose, her expression thoughtful. This is complex, Dale, she began, her voice calm but firm. You're looking at medical fraud, certainly a marital dissolution, and the legal standing regarding the child. The clinic, potentially Lori Schmidt, and Sarah herself could face serious repercussions. She leaned forward slightly. However, the primary concern in family court is always the best interest of the child. That standard could complicate any desire you have to simply sever ties completely. She paused, letting that sink in. You were present for the transfer, you supported the pregnancy, you created a nursery. Legally, those actions carry weight regardless of biology. She advised me to gather any documentation I might have, insurance forms, clinic receipts, email exchanges, even texts, anything that detailed the IVF process, and especially any of Sarah's previous statements about our shared parenthood. The return to the house was grim. Gus, ever the loyal friend, came with me. The air inside felt heavy, thick with unspoken words and accusations. Sarah was in the living room, her face pale, her eyes still swollen. The silence between us was confrontational, charged. I went directly to my office, Gus lingering near the doorway, a silent guard. I opened drawers, sifted through files. My hands trembled slightly as I pulled out old bank statements, medical bills, appointment confirmations. Please, Dale, don't do this. Sarah's voice was small, tearful as she appeared in the doorway. We can fix this. We can talk. I kept my back to her, rummaging through a box of old tax documents. Fix what, Sarah? I asked, my voice cold, distant. I didn't turn around. You stole my future. You took away my choice to be a biological father to my child. There's nothing to fix. Then tucked away in a locked box under a stack of old magazines, a box I hadn't realized she kept, I found it. A neatly organized file labeled donor profile. Inside, meticulously detailed, were the donor's medical history, educational background, physical attributes. Every point Sarah had rattled off, laid bare on paper. A stark, undeniable reminder of her calculated deceit. This wasn't a snap decision. It was a plan. Back in Martha's office, after I'd shown her the donor profile, she laid out the full scope. We'll pursue the divorce, of course, but there's also the potential for criminal charges against Lori Schmidt for her involvement in the alleged fraud, and possibly a lawsuit against the clinic for negligence and malpractice. Your wife's actions, while emotionally motivated, are legally problematic. I listen, absorbing the cold legal language. A profound moral conflict gnawed at me. Pursuing justice, I knew, meant dismantling my life completely, exposing Sarah, and involving an innocent child in a legal battle that would inevitably become public. It felt like tearing apart what was left of my world, piece by painful piece. Gus and Hey Betty were unwavering. "You're not alone in this, Dale," Gus said, clasping my shoulder over a quiet dinner at their apartment. Betty nodded. "Whatever you need, we're here." Their steady presence was a lifeline. But at night, alone in the spare room, the nightmares came. I relived the moment of discovery, the numbers on the form, Sarah's chilling confession about superior genetics. I woke in a sweat, Rusty stirring on my chest, his soft purr the only real sound. The weight of public perception began to press down on me. How would I explain this to our shared friends, to my family, or to hers? The questions spun in my head, a dizzying, inescapable cycle. Martha scheduled a formal mediation. "We need clear communication," she'd stressed, despite the emotional wreckage. "It's the only way to navigate this without further damage." The idea of sitting across from Sarah, trying to communicate after such a profound betrayal, felt impossible. But I knew it was necessary. The first mediation session was as tense as I'd expected, maybe worse. Sarah walked in with her own attorney, a sharp woman in a tailored suit, her expression cool and assessing. Sarah herself looked composed, almost defiant, a stark contrast to the tearful woman I'd left at home. She was clearly prepared to fight. She started by portraying me as overly emotional, unwilling to compromise. Her lawyer painted the deception as a desperate act of love, a wife's fervent desire for a child pushing her to make regrettable choices. Sarah spoke in soft, measured tones, emphasizing the years of infertility, the heartbreak. She was good, almost convincing. But Martha was better. She guided me through presenting the evidence, the insurance forms, my patient number, the donor ID, and then the meticulously kept donor profile I'd found. The falsified consent, the deliberate actions. It was all laid out, cold and factual. The mediator, a weary-looking woman named Ms. Evans, struggled to find any common ground. The emotional chasm between Sarah and me was too wide, too deep for any bridge she could build. We were talking past each other, through layers of attorneys and legal jargon, unable to touch the raw hurt that defined our reality. News of the divorce and whispers of the reasons behind it began to ripple through our social circle. Casual encounters at the grocery store became awkward. Friends would avert their eyes or offer stilted greetings. Some, I heard through Gus, sided with Sarah, believing I was overreacting, that blood isn't everything and a baby was a blessing no matter what. Others rallied behind me, shocked by Sarah's actions, offering their support. It felt like our life was being dissected by strangers, their judgment a constant hum in the background. A few days later, Martha called with an update. Lori Schmidt had been put on administrative leave from Heartland Fertility Clinic. An internal investigation was underway, Martha explained, the clinic trying to contain the fallout. It was a small victory, I supposed, but it felt hollow. Despite Gus and Betty's unwavering presence, I felt a profound sense of isolation. The intimacy of my past life with Sarah, the shared jokes, the quiet comfort of her beside me, was gone. It was replaced by a void. I often found myself contemplating the biological father's rights, a ghost in the wreckage of my marriage, a man whose existence had shattered my world and yet was entirely innocent in this. The trauma felt deeper than I'd initially realized. The stolen future, the broken trust, it weighed on me. I started therapy, a quiet office downtown, a woman with kind eyes who listened more than she spoke. It was a slow, painful process, peeling back the layers of betrayal and grief. Listeners, stick around to the end to see how life's costly choices unfold. One afternoon, leaving the courthouse after another unproductive session, Sarah was waiting for me. She stepped in front of my car, her face tear-streaked, her hair disheveled. "Please, Dale," she begged, her voice raw. "Don't do this. Forgive me. We can fix this. The baby, our baby needs both of us." She reached for my arm, her hand trembling. I looked at her, truly looked. I saw the desperation, yes, but beneath it, I saw the layers of deceit, the calculated planning, the cold facts of the donor profile. I saw the woman who had deliberately cut me out of the most fundamental act of fatherhood. I thought of Rusty, pressing his paw against the carrier mesh, a simple gesture of trust. I shook my head slowly, took a step back, and walked past her, toward my car. The image of Rusty's paw, a tangible sign of genuine, uncomplicated connection, was all I could focus on. The legal proceedings were grueling, a slow, methodical dissection of every aspect of Sarah and my shared life. Financial records, text messages, calendars, even old photographs. Everything was scrutinized. The details of the IVF, the clinic's protocols, Sarah's deception, my heartbreak, it was all laid bare in court. The facts were undeniable, but the emotional cost of dragging our broken life through legal scrutiny was immense. Eventually, the court ruled. The marital assets were divided, the house awarded to Sarah with a buyout that depleted most of our savings. The judge, acknowledging the unique circumstances, carefully outlined a future for the child. Sarah faced repercussions, not just legally, but socially. The investigation at Heartland Fertility Clinic led to more than just Lori Schmidt's termination. There were whispers of a larger settlement the clinic was forced to pay. Sarah's professional reputation suffered, and many of our mutual friends distanced themselves. I grappled with my role as a potential non-biological father to a child I had longed for, a child born of a deliberate lie. The baby was due soon, and the reality of its impending arrival was a constant, heavy presence. I visited the child after its birth, a small, fragile being wrapped in a hospital blanket. It was a moment filled with complex, contradictory emotions, a flicker of the love I'd felt building for months, a sharp stab of resentment for the circumstances, and a profound sadness for the innocence caught in our broken world. It wasn't simple. It wasn't pure. Martha, steady and pragmatic, helped me establish a clear, legally defined relationship with the child. It was a careful balance, honoring my desire to be a father while acknowledging the truth of the situation. It wasn't traditional, but it was a path forward, a legally recognized bond. I sold the house, the Craftsman on Willow Creek. The for sale sign in the yard felt like a final physical severing of my life with Sarah. It sold quickly, and I found a smaller place, a modest 2-bedroom in a quiet part of town with a small yard for Rusty. He remained my constant companion, a silent witness to the unraveling of my world and its slow, painstaking rebuilding. Slowly, imperceptibly at first, I began to heal. The sharp edges of betrayal softened. I learned to distinguish between the love I had genuinely felt for Sarah and the cold reality of her actions. It wasn't easy. There were days when the anger would resurface, hot and bitter. But those days became less frequent. I understood that paying the price extended far beyond the legal fees and the lost savings. It encompassed the profound emotional cost of a shattered trust, the reevaluation of everything I thought I knew about my life, my marriage, my future. The moral consequences lingered, shaping my view of family, of love, of honesty. There was no going back to the naive belief I once held. But I also began to reflect on the concept of fatherhood, realizing it was built more on presence and love, on unwavering commitment, than on biology alone. My relationship with this child, though born of deceit, would be one I chose, one I fought for. I started to envision a new future, one where I could be a father on my own terms, forging a bond that was true, unburdened by the lies that had conceived it. It wouldn't be the life I had planned, but it would be a life. I still carried the scars, indelible marks of a profound betrayal. But as I sat on my new porch, the evening breeze rustling through the leaves, Rusty purring contentedly beside me, I looked forward. The path ahead was quiet, complex, and still unfolding, but I was ready to navigate it. The legal proceedings stretched on, a protracted, draining battle that laid bare every detail of my life with Sarah. The court, navigating the complexities of medical fraud and the absence of biological connection, eventually ruled on the marital assets and, with careful consideration, on the child's future. Sarah faced her repercussions, both in the courtroom and in the quiet, judgmental whispers of our community. Her choices had irrevocably altered her path. I continued to grapple with my role as a potential non-biological father. When the baby, a girl named Lily, was born, I visited her. Holding her tiny hand, I felt a familiar tenderness mixed with a raw, undeniable ache of resentment. Martha helped me establish a clear, legally defined relationship with Lily, ensuring I could be a presence in her life without denying the truth of her conception. I sold the house on Willow Creek, severing the last physical tie to a life that had ceased to exist. I found a smaller place, quieter, with a patch of green for Rusty, who remained my steadfast companion. He watched my slow healing, a silent, furry witness. I learned to distinguish between the residual affection I held for Sarah and the cold, hard reality of her betrayal. The price paid was not just financial or legal, it was the profound, emotional cost of shattered trust, a wound that would take time to mend. The moral consequences lingered, forever shaping my understanding of family, love, and honesty. Fatherhood, I realized, was built on presence, on love, on choice more than on biology. I began to envision a new future, one where I could be a father on my own terms, forging a bond with Lily that was genuine, unburdened by the deceit of her beginning. I carried the scars, yes, but as Rusty purred beside me on the porch of my new home, I looked ahead, ready to navigate the quiet, complex path before me.